All right, so what does it mean when Ghislaine Maxwell's sworn testimony suddenly goes public just days before she's scheduled to testify before Congress? When the leaked deposition shows her repeatedly denying Jeffrey Epstein had any scheme to recruit underage girls for sexual purposes.
So, as far as I'm aware, a professional masseuse showed up for a massage. There is nothing inappropriate or incorrect about that. And your mischaracterization of it, I think, is unfortunate.
How many teenagers did he have that were professional masseuses that worked in his home?
Check the Foreman Foundation.
How many?
First of all, I'm not aware of teenagers who worked in this.
Claiming she doesn't know what questioners are talking about. When immediately after that testimony surfaces, reports emerge showing Maxwell drafted statements admitting the famous photo with Prince Andrew is real and acknowledging Epstein committed crimes, directly contradicting her sworn denials. When Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia points out that James Comer signed a subpoena for Maxwell nearly a year ago, but did nothing until pressure mounted. When Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche visited Maxwell in prison, then she got moved to nicer facility. Then suddenly she's agreeing to testify virtually on February 9th after previously saying she'd plead the fifth. Yeah, that means Trump's plan to use Maxwell as his star witness to deflect from Epstein connections might be blowing up spectacularly, because leaked testimony could be proving she's a perjurer whose word can't be trusted, whose potential lies for Trump will be immediately discredited. And here's why this matters so much. Because Trump apparently believed he controlled the Epstein narrative by blocking release of the files through Pam Bondi's DOJ. Only 1% of files released according to Garcia's claims. Millions of pages potentially still hidden. No new document dumps for weeks despite transparency law passed by Congress. But Trump's central miscalculation might be thinking that controlling official files means controlling everything. What's outside those files? Jeffrey Epstein's black book, survivor testimony, Maxwell's depositions taken in civil cases, all that material is beyond Trump's control. And it could be doing just as much damage as what's inside the sealed files that Bondi won't release. Think about what that means. Trump might have orchestrated this whole plan where Maxwell comes before Congress, tells convenient story about never seeing Trump with young girls, claims Epstein's activities were exaggerated, provides cover for everyone Trump wants protected. That's probably why Todd Blanche visited her in prison, why she suddenly got transferred to better facility with nicer conditions, why leaked reports suggested Maxwell told visitors she doesn't really know anything damaging about Trump, rarely saw them together. All setting up narrative where Maxwell testifies, defends Trump, attacks his enemies like Bill Clinton, creates spectacle that distracts from actual evidence of Trump's connections to Epstein. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built John Brown Show, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you appreciate what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. All right, let's get back to the video. Now let's walk through what this leaked testimony actually reveals, because the specific exchanges show pattern that could demolish Maxwell's credibility before she even appears before Comer's committee. In the deposition, Maxwell is asked about what she characterizes as a professional masseuse who showed up for Trump when he was at Epstein's Florida property. The attorney asks how many teenagers Epstein had working as professional masseuses in his home. Maxwell responds, "I'm not aware of teenagers who worked in this." That's denial. That's claiming no knowledge of underage girls working in Epstein's homes. Then the questioning gets more direct. Did Jeffrey Epstein have a scheme to recruit underage girls to use them for purposes of sexual massages? Maxwell's lawyer objects for foundation, but after being allowed to answer, Maxwell says, "I don't know what you're talking about." Complete denial. No scheme existed according to her testimony. No recruitment of underage girls. No sexual purposes. Just complete ignorance of what became Epstein's confirmed pattern of abuse that resulted in his criminal conviction and Maxwell's own conviction for sex trafficking of minors. And here's what makes that testimony potentially so devastating now, because we know from Maxwell's own criminal trial, from survivor testimony, from Epstein's plea deal and conviction, that there absolutely was a scheme, that Epstein did recruit underage girls, That Maxwell herself participated in that recruitment, in grooming victims, in facilitating abuse. That's why she's in prison serving 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. So her sworn testimony denying any knowledge, claiming she doesn't know what questioners are talking about, that's potential perjury. That's making false statements under oath in civil deposition. Share this video with everyone you know, because now reports emerge that Midas Touch and other outlets have obtained what appears to be draft statement written by Maxwell herself. In this draft, she apparently addresses allegations made by Virginia Giuffre. The draft reportedly shows Maxwell confirming that the famous photo of Prince Andrew with young Virginia Giuffre is real. That's significant because Maxwell and Andrew's team previously suggested photo might be fake, might be manipulated, might not be authentic. But if Maxwell's own draft confirms it's real, that's admission the encounter happened. The photo is genuine, undermining years of denials. And the draft reportedly goes further, with Maxwell admitting that Epstein committed crimes. That's direct contradiction to her sworn testimony, where she claimed no knowledge of any scheme, no understanding of what questioners meant about recruiting underage girls. Can't simultaneously claim complete ignorance in sworn deposition while privately drafting statements that admit Epstein committed crimes, and photo evidence of those crimes is authentic. That's textbook perjury. That's lying under oath in one forum while acknowledging truth in private documents. So Trump's plan to use Maxwell as credible witness potentially falls apart before she even testifies to Comer's committee. Because how can anyone believe her testimony about Trump, about what she did or didn't see, about whether Trump participated in Epstein's activities, when we have documented evidence she's lied under oath about fundamental facts? When she denied knowing about schemes that she's now apparently admitted existed in private writings? When her entire credibility could be destroyed by her own contradictory statements? Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show, because here's the strategic disaster this creates for Trump. He apparently needs Maxwell to testify because he wants her to provide cover, to say things like, "I never saw Trump with young girls," or "Trump didn't participate in anything inappropriate," or "Bill Clinton was there way more than Trump." That's probably the whole point of this testimony. Create media spectacle where convicted sex trafficker comes before Congress and somehow helps Trump by attacking his enemies while providing him alibi. But now that plan might backfire catastrophically, because Maxwell testifying before Congress will bring massive media attention to Epstein case. Will remind everyone of Trump's decade-plus friendship with Epstein. Will surface all the photos, all the quotes about Epstein liking women on the younger side, all the evidence of their close social relationship. And all of Maxwell's testimony defending Trump can be immediately discredited by pointing to her documented perjury, her contradictory statements, her proven history of lying under oath to protect herself and presumably protect powerful men in Epstein's orbit. And there's the immunity question. Reports indicate Maxwell's lawyers previously said she would plead the Fifth unless granted legal immunity. That's standard for someone facing potential additional legal exposure. But Comer's now saying she's agreed to testify on February 9th. So either she's getting immunity, which would be controversial decision to grant immunity to convicted sex trafficker just so she can testify before political committee, or she's decided to testify without immunity, which suggests some kind of deal or arrangement that makes her willing to risk further legal jeopardy. And what would make Maxwell willing to testify without immunity? Well, there's obvious possibility of pardon. Trump has pardon power. Could promise Maxwell that if she testifies helpfully, provides cover for him, attacks his enemies, he'll commute her sentence or pardon her entirely at end of his term. That's potential quid pro quo. That's using pardon power to obtain testimony that benefits Trump personally. And if that's the arrangement, it completely undermines credibility of anything Maxwell says, because she's testifying in exchange for freedom, not because she's telling truth. Now let's talk about why Trump might be showing signs of breaking down over this whole situation. There's his comment about feeling bad for Bill Clinton. That's extraordinary statement from someone who usually revels in enemies' suffering. Trump saying he feels bad that Clinton's name is being dragged through the mud over Epstein connections. Why would Trump express sympathy for political rival unless he sees himself in Clinton's position? unless he recognizes that same scrutiny, same public examination, same potential consequences could come for him. And Trump's defensiveness with reporters, telling CNN's Caitlin Collins to smile more, getting angry when pressed about Epstein, all suggest someone who's worried about where this investigation might lead. Someone who recognizes that Epstein's story isn't going away, that more information keeps emerging despite his attempts to control narrative through Bondi's DOJ blocking file releases. Someone who realizes that what's outside the official files, the depositions, the black book, the survivor testimony, might be just as damaging as what Bondi is hiding. There's also Trump's slip calling Epstein's property Jeff's Island before correcting to Jeffrey Epstein's Island. That's revealing psychological moment. Someone who didn't know Epstein well wouldn't use casual nickname, wouldn't refer to property as Jeff's anything. That slip suggests familiarity, suggests comfort level with Epstein that Trump now wants to deny, suggests relationship was closer than Trump claims when he says, "I didn't know the man well," or "I wasn't a fan." And here's where Republican strategy might be creating problems Trump didn't anticipate. Robert Garcia pointed out that Comer has spent enormous energy going after Clinton, threatening contempt charges, demanding testimony. But that precedent cuts both ways. If Comer establishes that former presidents can be hauled before Congress under threat of contempt, if he creates precedent that no one is above congressional subpoena power even after leaving office, that precedent could be used against Trump. Future Democratic Congress could use exact same tactics to force Trump's testimony about Epstein, about his business dealings, about anything they want to investigate. Trump might be recognizing that Comer's aggressive tactics against Clinton could become model for investigating Trump, that Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie demanding full accountability, threatening to lock people up for non-compliance, all that could be turned around and used against Trump administration. And maybe that's why Trump expressed sympathy for Clinton, not because he actually cares about Clinton's reputation, but because he sees his own potential future in Clinton's current situation. Now let's address the names being redacted in the released files, because Garcia and others have pointed out that most damaging emails have sender names blacked out. Emails referencing young children, discussing disgusting activities, all sent by people whose identities DOJ is protecting through redactions. And the question is why? Why redact names of people who sent emails to Epstein discussing potential crimes? Why protect identities of Epstein's correspondents and associates? The obvious answer might be that those redacted names include people Trump wants protected, people who could provide testimony about Trump's involvement with Epstein, people whose exposure would create pressure to cooperate with investigators and reveal what they know about Trump's activities. So, keeping names redacted serves Trump's interest by preventing identification of potential witnesses who could incriminate him. That's why only 1% of files are released according to Democratic claims. That's why Bondi isn't complying with transparency law that Congress passed, because full release would expose network of Epstein associates who could all become investigative targets and potential witnesses. So here's where this leaves us. Maxwell's leaked testimony potentially destroying her credibility before she testifies to Congress by showing pattern of perjury, contradicting her sworn denials with draft statements, admitting Epstein's crimes and photo authenticity. Trump's plan to use Maxwell as cover might backfire by drawing more attention to Epstein connections while providing testimony that can be immediately discredited. Trump showing signs of stress by expressing sympathy for Clinton, by getting defensive with reporters, by making slips that reveal closer relationship with Epstein than he wants to admit, and the strategic precedent Comer is setting by aggressively pursuing Clinton could be used against Trump by future Democratic Congress. If you want to stay on top of stories like this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Do you think Maxwell's leaked testimony proves she'll lie for Trump? And should Congress grant her immunity to testify? Because honestly, this whole situation reveals Trump's fundamental miscalculation. He thought controlling official Epstein files meant controlling the narrative, but information outside those files, depositions, survivor testimony, Maxwell's contradictory statements, all keep emerging and potentially doing just as much damage. Share this with everyone because this story continues, and Maxwell's testimony on February 9th could be the media spectacle that backfires on Trump completely. Stay tuned.